Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another tutorial. Hope you guys are having an excellent Friday. Today I want to show you the power of the De-Esser, and I want to show you that it's not just for vocals. If you guys are not familiar with what a De-Esser is, you'll find a De-Esser in various formats, different companies, all different types of VSTs that can do de-essing. And de-essing is reducing the harshness, the tss, tss, the harshness of the vocal. It's intended to really roll off that 5K and beyond, or 4K or 2K. A lot of the harsh treble that can be too much. It can be a bit obnoxious, especially as you start to add a lot of sounds. When you start stacking a lot of high sounds, just like low end, where you have a lot of low end stacking, or people are bass and sub are fighting for space, the same can really happen with your high end. You could have a very airy high lead that is breathing so well and has some sheen and air and brightness to it, but as soon as you add something else, they will fight for space. So a de-esser will help to carve out some of the space. It'll help to, as I call it, tame. It'll help to tame some of the high end and set like a ceiling. And think of it as like a dynamic EQ. Because if you approached it with EQ, you're going to cut it statically. What you've, reduced, if you put a shelf EQ or maybe you reduce it somehow, it's going to be cutting it statically. Now you might have that intent, but if you want a dynamic approach where if it goes a bit above your ceiling, you cut it off, you leave it, you cut it off, then you can get best of both worlds. Just like dynamic EQ gives you the ability to dynamically compress, limit certain frequencies at a certain threshold, a de-esser works the same way. And that's why you'll find a de-esser like preset even in compressors that'll do like multiband compression or FabFilter Pro MB. Now, some food for thought before we get into this. I'm going to show you guys a little preview of what I'm working on. This is a rough project of something I'm working on. It's got some electro vibes, old school electro vibes, complextro vibes. Let's go ahead and play it back. So stuff's really rough. I know things will be really loud. Like, I've not done the mix sound on this. There's going to be stuff all over the place. It's in its rough baby stages, so that's okay. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I want to show you what you can do both on the master, and I want to show you what you can do on the synth. So I'm going to solo the synth, and I actually have the de-esser on. So I'm going to bring up the synth. Now you can see here I have Waves de-esser. And the thing I wanted to talk about is that be careful. Some de-essers actually have a hard brick wall limiter, which is the case with this. The de-esser does clip it at 0 dB. Now, if you need that, if you're concerned about overhead, overshoot, then this might be for you. But for the master, especially here, my master is running hot. If I turn off the limiter, we're going to be hitting like +3, +4. And so because it's running hot, I'm using the Renaissance de-esser. If you don't want the signal to be altered and to be clipped at 0 dB, then look no further than the Renaissance de-esser. The Renaissance de-esser is my favorite one that I would probably put on the master. And a lot of engineers from Waves do the same thing. They'll have this either late in the signal chain or maybe right before their final limiter. And it's a way of just taming that high end. And so the presets that I recommend, let's first listen to our sound. The de-esser on the master is off. Let's go ahead and listen to the synth sound, and we'll continue to bring down the threshold and see how it affects the high end. We'll start at 0. So it's affecting the high end. I always recommend pull down that threshold, see how drastic it is, and then find the sweet spot. I think personally I liked it around -24, where it's just hitting it. It's just kind of activating the de-esser, but not just suffocating the sound. Because if you do this, you lose all your brightness. And it's finding that sweet spot. So for me, Even if you want to be conservative, you could leave it at, like, in this case, this sound, it's a loud sound. I'll put at -21. And here you can see the attenuation, how much it's taking back. So just left click to reset those. Now, the preset I love using is usually the full mix preset. I've used that on vocals. I've used that on synths. I've used that on various different things. The full mix preset is cool. There is this audio mode, split and wide, and the split basically will say, let me remove just one portion. They'll split it into two frequencies. Think of it as a multiband compressor where there's a crossover at the high end and it's going to leave the low end and mid intact. If you hit wide, it's going to try and de-ess the whole thing. Now it'll do a specific frequency, but the sonic quality will change. In their manual, they state that the split will generally give you better results, cleaner results. So experiment with them both, read the manual, e-manual. And let's go ahead and show you now. So that's an example of just, you're just grazing it. You're just grazing it. That's why I like using De-Esser. But with vocals, again, sometimes the harshness is extreme and you might have to use more intense settings with the De-Esser on vocals. Vocals can get crazy. Vocals are very obnoxious at times. Resonant peak frequencies that you gotta tame. So I'm gonna be making a video in the future about vocals and what I would do and how I would process the vocals, and I'll share those presets with you guys too, the mixer presets. That'll be another video. Let's go ahead and show you on the master what it's doing. So again, here I'm gonna left click, so we reset that. Again, they have a full mix preset, and you can see similarly exact same controls, and we can see the roll off, like where we're gonna start. I'm just gonna leave it at the default. I'm gonna say around 10K. I mean, you can put it much earlier, but it really depends. I would recommend using a plugin like Voxengo Span in case you're unsure, hey, where is this problematic frequency? Because it's hard for us to train our ears to listen for sounds we don't like because we're so sucked into like enjoying the moment and enjoying the music. So I fall victim to that too. I'm guilty of that too, of like, oh, this sounds dope. And then there's all these like frequencies that are bad that you need to cut out to make things shine even more. Let's turn on the De-Esser and we'll begin to pull it down. So it really starts to kick in around -24, -25 threshold. The range will dictate how much it bounces down. So if you want it to really pop down when it hits that threshold, reduce the range and it'll end up making that compression more prominent. I'm going to leave it at -18. So what's going on here, just to recap, with the synth, we just tamed it a bit. We used the Waves De-Esser, and that will set a ceiling of 0 dB. It has a built-in limiter. Zero latency though, so it's going to be good if you want to use that on individual tracks. For the master, again, I like using the De-Esser, the Renaissance De-Esser, just because even though this is red, don't be alarmed. Many of these plugins are designed for overshoot, for overhead. We're working with 64-bit plugins. We're using 32-bit floating point audio, so don't be too concerned about like it going over 0 dB. That's okay. Sometimes even that distortion can be pleasing. It all depends on how it sounds. So ultimately, the recap here is that if we mute the project and we look at it in action, it's really not doing much. The song's playing back. We're on the next bar. What is it doing? Oh, okay, there we go. Little hit there, -0.4. If we bring it down to -25, again there, that was on a new beat. And why did that attenuate to -1.5? Because on the start of a new beat, sometimes you can have a lot of stuff going on, a crash, the new kick drum. So be careful with this. Don't overuse it, especially on the master. Just enough. Like I would probably put at -24, where it's almost indistinguishable from the original sound. Because that way you retain your original sound, you retain your transients. Be careful because again, if you tame those high end too much, the transients lose power. You lose the punchiness, the brightness, the air of that high end. So when we actually put this at -24. Let's again have a listen. It's not really different at all. You know, probably could push this even further, but to show you guys that you can get a bit of dynamic control. And during the mastering stage, for me, it's all about the small choices. You know, a roll off, cut off here, you know, and then some compression, and then the next step, small progress, small steps that you make to make everything, all the decisions you do, create that one sound that you have. And de-essing is a great component that's really overlooked by a lot of producers. So get a hold of your favorite de-esser. I'm a big fan of the Waves de-essers, so check those out. The Renaissance de-esser for your mastering or mixing, but it does have some latency. It has a 1.45 ms. The Waves de-esser is classic, zero latency. Love that thing as well. So ultimately, it comes down to taming your frequencies and sculpting your sound, defining who you are. And I think you guys will have a lot of good success in terms of controlling the high end. An alternative to this will be multi-band compression. You know, another alternative will be dynamic EQ in the high end. But this is a more simple approach. If you need an easy approach, look no further than De-Esser. I'm using it a lot more often in my signal chain on the master, and a lot of stuff that I need to control the high end on. So I hope you guys like this video. Go ahead and grab your favorite de-essers, like I said, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Remember to smash the like button, drop a comment, and I'm going to be making more videos with my webcam as well, just to make it more engaging. I can't even talk. And I'll see you guys very soon. Take it easy. Keep making them gains.